The Nightmare on Elm Street chapter was released on the 26th of October 2017 and included a new killer Freddy Krueger, a new survivor Quentin Smith, and a brand new map, Badham Preschool, part of the Springwood realm. As you might already know, the development of this chapter was a little bit rushed, and so the developers had to reuse some assets from Haddonfield when creating the new map in order to meet the deadline, like for instance the two-story building, which was almost a direct copy of the one in Lambkin Lane, but with a few minor differences. The House of Pain was also repurposed for Springwood, and was in some ways even worse than the Haddonfield version, with it featuring a god palette in the living room too. Players immediately realized how survivor-sided this map was. Not only did the main building feature a literal infinite loop with the window vaults near the preschool, but there were tons of other incredibly safe spots on the map too. So instead of tackling the situation, the developers announced on the 3rd year anniversary livestream that they would be adding 4 new iterations of the Badham map.
These are some tiles that we're working on that will be introduced into the Springwood recipe, and we'll be having 4 new maps in the Springwood theme.
So new layout variations.
That's right. Yeah, so I call them layout variations because they'll still be using the preschool, they'll be still using the houses, so no new assets, but a new configuration for players to learn and have fun in.
These 4 new layouts were added along with the Freddy rework in patch 3.1.0, and at first the community was a little bit confused in regard to these variations. Springwood was already an awful realm, but now there were even more Badham Preschool maps being added? And the thing is that the maps themselves are all fairly similar to each other nonetheless. Like, I get it if the developers implement new maps that have different main buildings and interesting new gameplay elements, but Springwood literally has the exact same structures in it. So what's even the point? Why? Fast forward to October of last year, and the developers decided to do this again, this time with the MacMillan Estate. Now, I have gotten used to the new variations, but when I first saw them I was a bit baffled to say the least. MacMillan is traditionally known to have some of the most fair and balanced maps in the entire game, so why is the most balanced realm in the game receiving changes to begin with? This whole thing with each MacMillan map having 2 iterations is not only confusing for new players, who now have even more maps to learn the layout of, but it also punishes the already existing knowledge of experienced players, who are already accustomed to seeing the original MacMillan maps. If anything, this makes people use windows of opportunity more often, which honestly I'm not really sure if that's what the developers want to encourage. And the worst thing is that unlike Badham Preschool, the MacMillan Estate variations aren't even numbered in-game when loading into a match, which is just extra perplexing. The only way that you can even see the numbering is by going into the custom game map selection screen, which you won't ever see if you are just a regular player that queues in public matches. Also, remember the times when you could just use a MacMillan offering and you knew that you were gonna go to a fair map and at least have a fairly normal-ish DBD match? I used to constantly put on the MacMillan offering, just because I knew that we were gonna go somewhere familiar, but now I rarely do that just because there is a big chance that the match is gonna end up taking place on one of the new maps, which simply leave a bad taste in my mouth. There just isn't that sense of familiarity with them. The shuffling of the buildings and landmarks feels way too random. The maps themselves are fairly small, so they have pretty good 3-gen potential, and the distribution of palettes in windows is pretty uneven as well. Not to mention that ever since the Unreal Engine 5 update, all MacMillan maps run terribly, making the FPS awfully low. And now, 9 months later, we are going to receive 2 new map variations for Mount Ormond Resort and 2 for the Yamaoka Estate maps. These have the same problem as the ones from the MacMillan Estate, where they are not numbered in-game, which once again makes it very confusing. Now, some of you might say, but Sashko, you have always advocated for new maps being added to already existing realms, so what is the problem? Yes, I do really want the developers to stop adding realms that have just one map in them, and they have started doing that as of lately, with, for example, the Forgotten Ruins being a part of the Decimated Borgo, so I am very glad about that. But let's get one thing straight. These are not new maps. These are variants. They do not offer any kind of unique gameplay, since they feature the same buildings and landmarks as the original maps. The only thing they do is just shuffle around the different structures. That's not a new map. And I personally feel like this is just wasted potential. The time, effort and resources that went into creating these iterations could have been put into something else. Like, for example, finally finishing and releasing the village map from the Backwater Swamp realm. Speaking of that, when exactly is the Swamp rework coming to the game? We have been waiting for that for more than 1 year at this point. Now, I have to give the developers credit here, because they have been busting their asses off lately in terms of new content. A whole Dungeons & Dragons collaboration chapter, an ambitious anniversary event, Lara Croft as a survivor, and now another collaboration is on the horizon. Keep in mind that all of this is happening in a time frame of less than 3 months. But this constant output of new content might be hindering the game in the long run. Think about it, Behavior has to rework around half of the content that they put out. Sometimes even more than one rework is needed, so I definitely would not be surprised if some of these new map variations end up being problematic in some way in the future. And I can already see potential issues with them. Some of the new iterations, especially the Ormond ones, look like they feature absolutely massive dead zones. And the new Sanctum of Wrath too, like, just look at that. Literally a quarter of the whole map is straight up empty. Also, I don't know about you, but these structures are so close together that it looks very unnatural to say the least. So to recap, in my opinion, the resources that go into these new map variations could be utilized somewhere else. Just imagine a Yamaoka Estate map with a new and unique main building. Or maybe a scientific observatory for Ormond. I guess for now the least that the developers could do is to number the different variations so that players have an easier time adjusting to them and wrapping their heads around these new additions. Well, I guess that was it. I apologize for the rant, this probably isn't as big of an issue as I make it out to be, but I just wanted to get this stuff off my chest. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to let me know by leaving a like down below, and also I would be glad if you would consider subscribing as well. Anyways, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!